gotta get to. Hey, welcome everybody who's already in chat and looking. First thing of business, it's going to take us a minute or two to get fully set up. If you are watching this after the fact, feel free to scrub forward, 5-10 minutes, and you'll get straight to the first story. And hi to everybody else. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Not too bad.
I have not talked to Susan today, but I suspect that she's on her way. So she's got something going on in July. So she's gonna miss one in July. And there we are, 6 o'clock. It is running on all the channels. If you're watching on Facebook, we recommend you go to Twitch because that's where we interact mostly with chat. And yeah, welcome everyone. I'm going to pass it over to Mac to start.
Hey, welcome all of you to Workshop Show. It's a Storylux show, and you're in for a real treat tonight. It's a chance for you to see storytellers rework their stories based on feedback in real time. So you can watch their creative process at work, and you can watch us work with them and work together to play with their stories. So it's a real treat. So back to you, Dan. Oh yeah, and that's the guy with the real microphone and the real headphones. That's Daniel Andrew Boyd, who's the co-host and producer of the show.
Hey. Hello to Sonic. Hello to Just Blaze Detroit. Boom. Yeah, we are a 501c3. You can listen to our podcasts. You've come to this show. This is every Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And you can check out our website. We are at Storyluck on everything. And we're here to promote storytelling. There are, we got our feature Tim Barnes today. And I'm going to throw it back over to Mac to finish out the introductions.
Well, let's go right to the crew introductions. And this time I'm going to call on people. But we've got a prompt, and you can also in the chat respond to this prompt in a sentence or two. And the prompt is share a time when you felt at peace, or just something that you do that lets you access that feeling of peacefulness. So I'm going to just get going, and I'm going to ask Kay, who's our resident tender heart, to respond first. Kay?
Why, thank you, Mac. No, this is my wheelhouse for sure. I am a self-care human being, and so it's got to be naps. I've got a napping strategy. I've got decor that flips in and out. There are textures involved. Napping brings peace.
Great. And Noah, our resident roustabout. What could possibly bring you peace, Noah?
I'd have to say hanging out with people that I love. So friends, family, everyone on this show, of course. That makes me feel at peace and makes me feel safe.
Great. And Susan, you've just come in, and Susan is our resident newbie.
I'm not sure that she has her headset in. Can you hear us, Susan? I think there's something going on with her.
So, Tim, are you ready to jump in on this?
Yeah,
what?
Yeah. I always feel at peace when I can smell some coffee brewing and hear the faint chatter of people talking. So I guess I just feel at peace in coffee shops.
Wow. And Dan, we jump in on this?
You gave this to me beforehand, and I had one, but it's a cheat because it was somebody else's that I thought I liked. I'm gonna go with one for me. I think it hits me very randomly. Like, I don't expect it. And that's just what I'm going to say. There are times where there's tons of people around, or times where I see something and it'll just be like a calm sense that just washes over me.
Okay. A little chaotic, a little random, not too surprised. And for me, you know, it's when I wake up in the morning and I'm lying there and I put my hands in the back of my head and I look up and a friend of ours has come in and painted little stars on the ceiling. And just before the day gets going, I can just sort of lie there and think about what am I going to do today and just grab a little more time just doing absolutely nothing. So, Susan, are you wired and are you in?
No, she's having.
Oh, here she comes.
Yeah.
Susan, can you hear us?
I can hear you. You can't hear me?
No, we got you. A little echoey, but wanted to give this a shot. What brings you a feeling of peacefulness, Susan?
Sitting next to Lake Tahoe. That was pretty peaceful.
Oh, wow. Like you can't just hike or walk over there, huh? But
no.
Nice. Okay, great. So I'm going to just give you all a quick rundown on what's going to happen tonight. First of all, you're going to hear 2 stories in total tonight. The first one from the featured teller. Then the crew will give the teller feedback, questions, comments, suggestions. And then while the teller, Tim in this case, is pondering that and thinking about working that feedback in or what he wants to do with the story, Dan is going to slip in a lesson. And as that lesson finishes, the first bit of magic happens. Tim is going to retell his story, and you'll get to see what he did with the feedback. Then we'll bring up the second teller, and we'll go through basically the same thing again. The second teller will tell their story, feedback, comments, and suggestions. They'll have a little bit of time to think about it, and then they'll go ahead and do their retelling. It's about this time that I forget something. What am I forgetting here, crew?
What you're forgetting is that we are all friends here, and I'm at peace, and you should be at peace too. And so when we are critiquing, we are always creating the work. We're only doing so in the spirit of getting better and teaching, and it is never aimed at the person. So if you're out there in the universe watching us and you're worried that feathers are getting ruffled and feelings are getting hurt, do not worry. We are all friends, and we're all doing this to make the story better.
Right. And that's just key for all of us. It takes a lot for a teller to come on. You're vulnerable, or when one of the crew tells, and we want to kind of hold you up and work together. And then just before the end of the show, if you stick around for it, a special piece of magic happens. I'm going to tell you what it is, but we'll explain it a little further why we do this. And that out of the blue, one of our crew members retells one of the 2 stories in their own voice. And that sort of just is like an express train coming through when you're standing at the, down in one of the tunnels in the CTA, and it just goes by, and then we close the show. So, Dan, I'm gonna send it back to you.
Yeah. Some people had some good quick ones. I tried to highlight them, but Mr. Wiley, he's at peace taking a drive in his car on a Sunday afternoon. I think being in a car is a big one for people. It's a great place where you can just, surprisingly, we're very good at zoning out in the car. Pure Love 95 throughout that she meditates and prays. And Sonic Blaze is at peace most when he's hanging out with his partner. So that is our intro for this show. Tim, are you feeling prepared to do a story?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I just start?
Yes. Whenever you're Feeling it.
Let's do this. Yeah, all right. Okay, so it was during quarantine that after years of suggesting it, my girlfriend finally got me to start seeing a therapist. I never saw the point of it or thought of myself as someone who has problems. I mean, I know I had maybe slight problems, but not, problems. I grew up with two loving parents who not only told me I could become anything I wanted, but actually believed it and did everything in their power to try and make that so. And though I know they often struggled to support my sister and I, we never knew exactly how they struggled. I was conscious of their struggles, but never too conscious. I was aware when there were money troubles, but never knew the details. I think this was their effort to surround us in a Garden of Eden of sorts. And that kind of thing is a blessing and a curse. I was constantly humbled and appreciative, and thus never saw the worthiness of complaining too much or about anything, or doing anything to ruffle feathers. The pandemic, I think, gave us all some time to reflect. And what I saw in the mirror was not a guy who didn't have problems, but a guy who didn't know how to process his problems or accept them as problems or even vocalize them. And that extends to how I feel about stories. I write stories for a living. Sometimes it's for a sketch on a kids show or a funny scenario for a late night host to end up in. And almost all the stories I tell are about the adventures happening to other people. Even if it stars me, it's never really me, because the truth is, I don't consider myself someone who has stories to tell. Like I mentioned earlier, my sister and I grew up with two loving parents. We lived in the same house that my dad grew up in South Central LA. As the second youngest of 8 siblings, he has stories to tell, and all of them with an edge of humor that says, yeah, times are tough, but that's not the point. He often described how the neighborhood changed in his lifetime. When his mom and dad, my grandparents, first moved the family there, they were some of the first Black residents on the block. Then white people grew wings and flew away. And somehow Reagan allowed crack to trickle down into the neighborhood, so things changed for the worse. But I was sheltered from it all, never really walked around the block, never truly experienced violence. Honestly, I had no clue I lived in the infamous South Central. Maybe that's why I don't have many stories of my own to tell. In fact, the ones that I do from my early childhood usually come from the lens of my parents describing something I did. I spent most of my time watching TV and movies, reading books, writing my own weird science fiction stories. A true nerd. I didn't enjoy sports on any intellectual level. Even if it was fun to play, you only win because of the rules, and you don't even get candy if you do. So why are we doing this? My favorite activities were the ultimate distraction, going to the movies. The movies are another Eden of sorts. And at some point, my childhood brain settled on the idea of someday being a filmmaker. By my final year of middle school, my parents moved us to a region of California known as the Inland Empire. It's a sprawling suburb smack dab in the middle of a desert, full of wide open spaces that I had no idea how to interact with. So I didn't. Perhaps that's another reason I don't have many stories to tell. My youth was spent being sheltered from outside forces, and my adolescence was spent shielding myself from anything unexpected. But both of those things came knocking at my door during my second year of college in a moment that pushed me out of Eden. But before I get into that, I just want to clarify, it wasn't college, it was city college. I moved to Santa Barbara after high school to attend their city college because they had a pretty good film program. I spent my first year there in a sort of dorm in the infamous college party town, Isla Vista, where other city college kids could piggyback off of the more authentic college experience the UC students were having. I'll never forget it. The first, there was a kid who raised his hand during orientation at the sort of dorm we were at to ask if he was able to bring his protective firearm into his room. Halfway through the year, a student impaled himself by jumping off the second story towards the pool, but landing instead on the pointed gate surrounding it. He luckily lived to tell that story. And my roommates were these wild and crazy Hawaiians who made the living room carpet reek of bong water and somehow destroyed their bedroom door once a week. All of this is why me and a friend decided to find something a little more quaint to live in the following year in downtown Santa Barbara. And by that time, I started working at a huge, beautiful movie theater called the Arlington. Designed with Spanish-style architecture, it seated about 3,000 people and screened only one movie at a time. To this day, it is one of the best jobs I've ever had. That theater and Santa Barbara as a whole gave me so many characters to analyze and fun moments and new friends. But I felt like it was all a dream world. I was never really class conscious for most of my life, but suddenly I was making friends who lived in mansions, or at least really, really, really nice houses that I misconstrued as mansions at the time. It was an entirely different reality from what I grew up with. And I was constantly navigating how to make the right social cues, how to not seem threateningly black and blend into every situation. Another blessing and a curse, seeming pleasant at all times, even when you're displeased. One night, on my way home from work, I was actually let out early by the manager. A stranger casually tapped me on the shoulder, and I had to take my earbuds off to understand what he was saying. He was a scruffy white guy in a brown hoodie, nothing characteristically memorable about him, really. And he asked if I had a light for a cigarette. I didn't smoke, and I didn't have a light, so I said, "No, sorry, I don't have one." He then lifted a lighter from his pocket and lit his cigarette. It definitely felt weird in the moment, but I was used to weird. However, in hindsight, it was him signaling that he was a chaos agent, meant to pluck me out of the strange plastic reality I had built around myself. He walked and talked with me, said some lie about he was meeting his girlfriend up the block. I was used to engaging in random small talk with strangers. I always welcomed the invitation to learn the odd eccentricities of people who seemed to desperately be in the need of communication with someone. But there was something odder about this guy than most. I crossed the street to get to my place, not at the intersection, but in the middle of the sidewalk, and he followed. And as I got to the corner, he tapped my shoulder and asked if I had change for him to catch the bus. I didn't have any, so I told him I didn't have any. And in response, he punched me in the jaw, right in the center of the bottom of my bottom two teeth. It was very shocking. I don't think about it often, but I'm not near any of you here, but it's the randomness of, me talking to you right now and then suddenly punching you in the face. Mind you, I was wearing my movie theater uniform, so black shoes, black slacks, a white dress shirt, a black vest, and a black bow tie. So if anyone was looking, it seemed like he punched a tap dancer that walked straight out of an old black and white film. The adrenaline rushed in. What in the world was going on? I tried to push him away, and he continued to swing, telling me over and over again, "I'm going to stab you. I'm going to stab you." I responded with, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" It was like call and response from the most fucked up sermon you could imagine. He stopped at one point, maybe because I punched him a few times in the head, or maybe it was because he knew he had done just the right amount of damage, and it was time for him to scurry back into the abyss through which he came. He told me to run, and as I did, he fled off. It was around the holidays, so my roommate was already away with his family. I walked into the apartment and I saw blood trickling from my mouth. I then knocked on the neighboring apartment's door. I wasn't shocked, but I experienced shock through theirs. When we walked out to see which direction the man went, someone noticed I was bleeding in the back of my left shoulder. We didn't see where he went, but that man kept his promise. He was going to stab me. I called my parents, let them know what happened, reassuring them that everything was okay. The ambulance came, and so did a few officers who asked me some standard questions, I suppose, like, did I have any gang affiliations? What a thing, I thought. To be from South Central, sheltered from gangs, only to end up in Santa Barbara wearing a bow tie, bleeding from a white stranger, and then being asked if I had any gang affiliations. After years of being sheltered from violence in South Central LA as a kid and the Inland Empire as a young adult, violence suddenly found me through a random, scruffy white man in one of the wealthiest cities in California. This was the outside I was distanced from all my life, rushing in. I was jovial about the entire situation. The funniest I've ever been in my life was probably in the ambulance that night. "Who stabbed someone before 7 p.m.?" I exclaimed to the laughing paramedic. After years of being sheltered from violence.
Not before 7, though.
It wasn't until phone calls started trickling in from my family members and friends that I realized, okay, that's why all this matters. That's why my life matters, I guess. It's for these connections with other people, not for yourself. Because if I died today, I wouldn't really care. I'd be dead. But there are people who would. And I guess that's kind of the point. And as beautiful as that is, perhaps that's why I feel like I have no stories to tell, at least not yet. Because before I do, I just need others to tell me what it is. This is the part where my therapist tells me I've run out of time. And that's my story.
Wow. Oh, Tim, you had some zingers. It's terrible.
Oh, ta-da! Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're gonna start right off with feedback. But the first thing that I'm gonna run into, this is sort of our story luck intro question, is how did it feel telling it? When you were telling it, were there things you noticed and like?
Yeah, there are things I noticed. Like I do have just like an inescapable radio cadence. It never sounds like I'm really talking. That's just like a lifelong problem I have. But it felt. I think it's been a long time since I've told this story, and I think with time I've been able to add certain things I've realized that moment sort of meant to me. Because I think the first time I ever told this story was actually in, I think like the first year I moved to Chicago, and it was still me processing it. And it was more this angle of like, this is a weird thing that happened to me. And it was just the details. But I think with time, I've been able to give it some context in my actual life. And it's something that, I don't think in some ways it's the type of story you would expect someone to tell from a moment like that. I generally just felt better telling this than any other time I've told it.
Yeah, it was good. You said the thing about radio voice. And so I have this question out. How written is it?
This is very written because
perfect.
Kind of what I was saying about stories. I'm horrible at actually. I'm a very concise person, so I'm horrible at giving details naturally. And also because of the pandemic lifestyle we have, it's very rare for me to talk extensively. So that's part of why.
Yeah,
but I do think I could attempt retelling it without.
Cool. Yeah. I think that the radio voice thing is very astute, and sort of the way you said it was like as though it's a con, but I think it's also very valuable to be able to do that, right? It was very easy to understand you while you were doing it. You could follow it along. I really liked that about this. You've got an epic story in here. You span a lot of time. It is not hard to follow the logistics of that time frame going forward. I think probably after this discussion, we're going to like hone it in and build out a shorter experience. But that's just for process. It's not because you can't make this length of thing work, because I think you did a really good job of telling a long story.
Thank you.
And I'll open it up to other people. Mac, you're on.
Yeah. So Tim, I loved your story.
Oh, thank you.
I loved how you kind of were like, you're kind of like a narrator through the story. It's happening to you as you're kind of narrating it, which actually gives you a lot of freedom, because you're looking at it and you're sort of saying, but and I only felt this way, or I was jovial in the ambulance, for instance. I thought that kind of thing. It was like it's sort of like you're reporting stuff. What I think you could do with this story, if you wanted to, is you could bring us in right when this scene is happening with the weird guy, the agent of chaos. Yeah. You could sort of bring us in right there. You're walking with this guy, and then you could keep jumping out to like I like the idea that you had your movie thing on, you know, whatever your movie uniform. You could sort of explain how this is, you know, and then you could say, you know, you could jump to another scene like that. The closest you've ever come to something like this was to the Hawaiian roommates, you know, and then build it up, let it happen, and then just get snippets of your previous life experience that lets us see that you're kind of an innocent in terms of this and why. Yeah. So I think that could be more concise, but it would hook us right at the beginning. Okay. I don't think you need the therapist. You know, I don't think you need that. But just, this is like a moment of whoa, you know? So anyway, that's just my 2 cents here. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to be too prescriptive there, because I think that's a question. The therapist is so prominent of a way to start this, and you come back to it. And so there's a question to me about how important is that frame for you? Because I agree with Mac. It seems that there might be it might be 2 stories. Yeah. Right. Is that what's, is this idea of, one, maybe it's just a frame to say like, this is why I'm thinking about it. This is why I'm talking about it. But maybe there's this draw for you that is like, I want to talk about what therapy means, because how do I process it without talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I do think perhaps that was the intro just because it's like therapy is a very recent addition to my life. And so it is one of the main pretty rare sources of me exploring feelings, I guess, or even extrapolating on anything at all. But yeah, maybe there's a way that the therapist could sort of be a character or something in the story and have, but everything you're all saying makes total sense.
So I want to let a couple other people get in, but I have some more things to bounce off of. I'm gonna go to Noah, and then I'm gonna go to Susan.
I enjoyed the therapist angle because I think it's always good to talk about that and normalize it. But it's specifically because as soon as there's a therapist in the story, you're like, what trauma is coming up? I'm already bracing myself. So I was as hooked as soon as that. And your radio announcer voice kind of played into that for me, right? So clinical, you've analyzed this, it's a big deal for you. You tell us immediately that you don't really have anything else to talk about. This is the thing that you want to tell us. And I was just thinking, maybe if you can you can get a little more animated and a little more, excited and into it when you're telling, this thing that's happening, that's crazy, right? Yeah. That might be a nice performance thing that you can do. And I definitely agree with Mac.
Would you mind walking Sasha?
I think you have it sort of very linear. If you could jump back and forth a little bit, I think that would make it more interesting. But I disagree. I think you could definitely make, the psychologist work and be.
Yeah, but right. But it's a choice. And we can make it work if it feels like it should be there. If and it helps push the story forward. I'm gonna unmute you, Susan.
I liked your story a lot. You had me with you like the whole way, like Danny said, like from the time you were little all the way through it. I was just like, what? So I really liked it a lot. I was just wondering, did you were you like so like, oh, I just talked to strangers, this is fine? Or was there ever a point like when he, lit his own cigarette after asking you that your mind kind of went, like this might not go well?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I had had other moments like that too, where, I mean, I've just like talked to so many strange people throughout my life. Like this is just like the first time that it led to what you never hope would happen. But yeah, it definitely was like a buildup of concern. I think it just symbolizes something bigger to me, just because it was so incredibly random. It's not something that I even like in my head is like was this a hate crime? Like what was it? Like he didn't say anything about race or anything. It is just such a, it almost feels like written, because it was so unwritten in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Susan's question brings up a point for the audience. I'm one of those people, I talk to strangers all the time. And sometimes when I tell these sort of, as Kay put it, Twilight Zone stories, people won't believe them, because who would talk to a stranger? Who would talk to somebody on an elevator? That's just unbelievable to them. And one way to mitigate that is to say up front, I'm the sort of person who interacts with agents of chaos. Number two, and this isn't good or bad, but I will say you are very kind in the description of this person. Right? You're sort of giving them a lot of kind of benefit of the doubt in the way they're being portrayed, and sort of, oh, he does this thing and he's an agent of chaos. It's sort of this jovial way, and Mac and Noah alluded to it, because you have the radio voice, you're sort of far away from it watching you, and you can be funny about it. But there's another version of this story where that's a red flag. He asked me for a light and then he pulls one out. There's a version of that where you're like, oh, he's telling me that he's a liar. Right? And that's a scary thing and might be worth playing with. I'm going to throw it to Kay, who's had you need a second.
I mean, there's no need to put me back on. I have zero constructive to say. I just felt like this dude, he was auditioning for the Joker, before the Joker came out. He's like, watch what I can do. I appreciated, maybe the amount of time that you had to process this, and then through the lens of the psychologist, therapist. I also agree with Noah. I like that idea that you get to be clinical about it. You get to be removed. You get to say just the facts, ma'am. And we don't have to necessarily see you get emotionally involved. And to me, you gave us a lot of buildup to let us know that, you're an everyday guy. Nothing really ruffles you. You've had no reason to be ruffled before. But then if you were going to take any of the advice from our other panelists here, saying like maybe you want to spice up your delivery, maybe only when you speak in the voice of the agent of chaos, so that we really know something is messed up. Like, hey, everything's cool, and then the guy asked me for a light and I don't have one, and then he pulls out his lighter. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Kay mentioned in the comments that a while back we had another random act of violence story from one of the crew members. And so, this is for the audience more than anybody. A couple of new people have jumped on. We're doing storytelling, and we are sort of doing a roundtable discussion of a story that Tim just told about going to, I'm not sure, going to therapy, and about sharing sort of a traumatic moment of randomly getting punched by a stranger. So one of the things, I'm going to mute people because I don't know who's buzzing. One of the things he brought up in his story is this idea of, Tim's a writer. He writes all the time, but he doesn't tell a lot of personal stories. And one of the things that I want to talk about with that is why, you know, sometimes that's something that gets into a lot of our heads. Why I haven't done anything worth telling a story about. I could come up with a great fantasy. I could tell you this cool story about my brother who ran down a thief. I know all these people who have these great stories. But one, with craft and cadence and pacing, you know, we've all seen things. Not everything needs to be a MCU blockbuster style thing. We also like seeing Sofia Coppola movies, which are just about girls having existential dilemmas, right? That's just as compelling, and nothing happens. No offense to those movies, right? We actually like them. We like a lot of things where nothing happens. And so through craft, you can make that happen. But the number two thing that I want to say is, one of the reasons to tell these stories is, especially from people who have this idea to do it, and who do it in other mediums, is these stories don't get told, and people need to process them and have ways to articulate them. And in the audience, there'll just be someone out there. Like, if you have it on your heart to tell a story, there's somebody out there who needs to hear it. And afterwards, whether they come up to you or not, the thing is, they're just like, oh, somebody finally articulated it. This is the thing that I've been ruminating on. And that's the reason to get these out and craft them and work on them. Dun, 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 dun. So yeah, okay. So we hit the TJ thing. There was one other talk about teaching. I love the line about no candy for sports. Another big piece of this was this idea of being shielded. And I think you avoided the word sheltered.
I think I said it a couple times.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Yeah. But the context for me and what I came away with was just this idea that it was, you know, there's sort of two types of sheltered. There's a sheltered where, like, why did you keep this from me? Where you felt pent up. And there's another where it's this idea of a shield. You throughout this whole story, sort of like you are with the stranger, you're very kind to the people around you, and you paint them in a nice light. And that's very compelling.
Yeah, I feel sometimes tortured by the third person perspective. I don't think with I very often, or at least I don't project that very often, and so that's something I'm sort of realizing I need to deal with. And I think that's like the overarching theme of the whole thing of at the end I was trying to kind of make the point of I still need some sort of nudge to if I were to tell more personal stories, to really understand what the anchor to them is.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question real quick. If I were to phrase it like this, what draws you most to this story?
It is so clearly something that happened to me. And it is, I mean, that's really it. Everything else feels very ethereal, if that's even a word. It feels very nebulous.
Right. But there's
yeah.
some action in getting punched.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. All right. That is something to chew on.
Let me just jump in for a minute with Tim.
Yeah, please.
So, I'm thinking that, you just kind of talked about this movie theater. What was it called? The
Arlington. Yep.
Arlington. And that, it's like home for you there. You were working there. And so what I got interested in is, well, what was that like for you? It's like a magical world. You're so into movies. And I think the difference is you can tell the story around big concepts, which is kind of what you did with some of the story, and you put in scenes. Yeah. But if you really worked on a scene just for yourself and tried to help us inhabit your skin when you were at that movie theater, dressed the way you were, talking randomly to people, maybe how at home you felt, what were your body sensations, whatever, not for this story. Yeah. But it's a way of thinking of this. Stories don't have to always be about big concepts. They can just be about what is it like to be in your skin. And because it's your skin, you think it's nothing remarkable. Yeah. But what is it like to be who you are in a situation like that and bring us into your world? It's just something to think about.
Yeah. And that's a great point, Mac. This idea, that is what people are looking for in this medium. Is we're so bored of ourselves. We know what's in our head and how we think about it. I want to know what's in your head. What are you thinking? How, what's the process? Like, I know what I would think if I got punched by a stranger, but given your story, I have, I want to know more about your thought process. Yeah. And like, what were the mechanics of those split-second reactions? I have a question. Will you tell me again what this dude looked like?
Yeah, he really is sort of a blur to me. All I really remember is that he wore a brown hoodie, that he was probably had brown hair, and definitely not a full-on beard, but I definitely just think, scruff, sort of dirty. Yeah. And that's really it. But definitely had that sort of thing of, I don't think I mentioned this, but the sort of lingering eye where there was a sort of craziness behind it. But I've talked to people, with that before too, and I think I usually found that just like being conversational can kind of get you out of almost anything, like as long as you're kind.
Right. Yeah, I think almost all my crazy eye stories, I have those lighter moments, and then I just talk them out of it, right?
Yeah.
You treat them a little human, and they're like, "Oh, thank goodness."
Yeah.
And you can extricate yourself without too much trouble.
Yep.
But not always.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, I think he put a great idea of just like having a whole story about, there's a lot of peaceful moments in this where you could get a story out of, and it's an idea of like, what do we want to play with when we come back? Since you said the thing that's calling you is the action, I think what we should work on is that. How do we punch up this action and sort of let's do the next one where we try to push it to 11. Put away the radio voice to the best of our ability, because that's another thing that you mentioned, and just like so we can play with it, right?
Yep.
So that's what I'm thinking about. And for ideas from the crew, I think Kay put up a good one that make a real big contrast between his voice and your voice, and get some dialogue in there so that you can play those characters. Open in a storytelling way, right? Open up. Where does this version start? I think we start with something to the effect of, let me tell you about the penguin outfit I'm in as I'm walking down the street, right? I'm a tap dancer. I've got on blah, blah, blah. Start us with the image of you just being, you know, I work at the fancy, right? This isn't no AMC BS. I think that there's a place to make a humorous thing about, like, what was the movie that you saw that day? Did you get to watch movies?
Yeah,
and run the projector and stuff.
Didn't get to run the projector, but it played one movie at a time, because it was just a one screen theater, and sometimes there were like live shows and stuff with bands and comedians and stuff. But yeah, I think that answered your question.
Yeah. So do you remember what the film was?
I really don't.
We should make something up that's funny. That's
well, the big movie I remember, I think when I first started working there, was that Avatar movie. So we could say it was Avatar, although I don't remember specifically if it was Avatar.
Tim, did this remind you of a scene or being in a particular movie when you were dealing with this guy?
No. Or is there a scene for a movie that comes to mind when you think?
No, I'm just thinking that you've been inhabiting movies so much.
Sometimes
people go through something and they feel like, oh my God, it's just like something. But that was a miss.
But I do remember feeling the sort of odd shock, like, oh, something's happening to me. Like I'm used to being, on the sidelines, sort of.
You're in the movie.
Now I'm in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
1 second. So next up, let's just play with it right away before we go into the lesson. Like, how are we gonna do? I think we're gonna. Yeah, I think we're gonna do just like a quick thing of, and anybody can jump in, or I'm gonna throw it to Noah. Who is the? I know Mac told me before the show, but who's the reteller today? Who's the designated reteller? Do you guys have it up?
I have it up. Let me look.
Maybe I have it.
Reteller today is
me.
So it'd be Mac.
It's Mac. Okay. So Noah, I'm going to throw it to you. What would you do to heighten the punching scene?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, move it. I guess. I have no idea. My first instinct was to say move it up, move it forward. Don't ease us in, and give us all. That's the thing with you. You tell us you've seen a therapist and a big thing happened to you, and then you tell us all the big things that didn't happen to you. So yeah, like if you start the way that Dan said, and you're like just telling us you came out of work at a movie theater and you look like a nerd, I'm not thinking that you're going to get jumped. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that is expected.
Yeah. So what if you got real quick? If you got punched in the face, how would you tell that story to me. You call me up and you're like, listen to this. Just give me 60 seconds.
I would just blurt it out. I would say, Dan, I got punched in the face and I froze like a statue and I didn't get killed somehow. That's what would happen, and that's what I would tell you. And then I would tell you everything that happened to lead up to it out of order, and you'd be very confused.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to just do this exercise with everybody real quick. And I'll go first, then we'll do Kay, Susan, and we'll leave Mac till possibly the end. So I call up Noah. I am walking down the street, minding my own business in a conversation, just listening with this guy talking at me. And all of a sudden, he fucking just cold cocks me. And I'm freaking out. And I don't know whether I'm going to like attack this dude or run away. And he hits me again. And then all of a sudden, we're in a fight. And then he's like, you should run away. And I'm like, oh, fuck, maybe I should. And as I take off, he takes off in the opposite direction. All right. Throwing it over to Kay.
So I just got out of work. It's the best job in the world, although I am dressed like a penguin who's a waiter at a spot downtown. But no matter, I like bow ties. I get to the corner and this guy is approaching. I'm like, oh, here we go. Because I can tell it's been 3 days since the last shower. Tops, like we're gonna have an issue. And he asked for a light, and I don't smoke. And he says he's gonna punch me, and he does. Like, wait, what is going on? All I can think of now is those self-defense classes I should have taken.
All right. You're muted, Susan.
So I'm just standing there about to get into my apartment, and I turn around and he just punches me. I didn't even think. Punched him right back. Now we're in a fight.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. So what did we learn from those? One, there's a lot of ways to do it. And some of those were more colloquial than others. One of the things that I think we should focus on for your retelling of it is getting into those moments, split-second details. Where does it land on your face? You know, talk about the things you can like really bullet time it so that you like, and this happens, time stops. These are the things that I'm thinking. And then we run away. And let's just, what is our ending in this version of the story? If we're just telling the white hot action of it. Right. I mean, for the exercise, we don't necessarily need an ending, but I think it's a good question if we can come up with one. And this is open to anybody in chat.
Well, you know, one of the endings could be, you know, of course you notice that you're bleeding from behind you, but the cop's saying, you know, do you have any gang affiliations, you know? And if you clue us in with the rest of your life, that's a little crazy. I think actually I got this. I'm a lot like you, Tim. I really think if I'm nice, I can get out of anything and nothing really bad is going to happen, which I think is a theme for this. But I think you're both going through it and you're saying to yourself, is this happening to me? You know, that's where I think for you, it's like the guy says, you better run away. Like, you know, you didn't think of that before? Yeah. You didn't.
Yeah. So I think I attacked her. Had to explain to me how to
the violence of the attack and your kind of disbelief this is even happening to you, and that's where it's you can give us the white hot action, but also give us the fact that it's like what is this happening to me? You know, even even when you see, you know what I mean. You don't even know how bad you've been hurt, and so you're both matter of fact, but you really are giving us that this is really, really happening to you. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
So I think you can do the two together. Don't lose the fact that you're wondering. It's like wondering, like, am I in a movie? But you know what I mean. Yeah.
Right. So that is going back to that contrast and this idea of you can, by this being a personal story, you get all three parts. You know, there's going to be like, basically there's three characters here. There's you as narrator, you who's in the white hot moment, and then also this dude. You as narrator is basically, we know you exist. You know, you can step out and be that person, but we know you exist because you're the one, that's who's making the choices on how to frame this. Right. So one of the things that you can heighten is the irony here. Right. We know you can let cue us in that this guy is dangerous by heightening him, give him that Joker laugh. You can, you know, steal Kay's line or come up with one where it's like, this guy's auditioning for the fucking Joker. I don't realize this at the time, you know, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm into movies. I just got back from Avatar. You're a crazy person. What could go wrong? You know, violence is a myth. It's action on television. But then every time you do him, he's saying something crazy in a crazy way. I like I'm partial to bagging on cops. So going to the cops and leaving it at, so now I'm dressed like a ballerina, you know, blah, 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 with blood all over my face. And somehow the question he has for me is like, do I have gang affiliations?
I play D&D with a group of coworkers every Sunday.
Right. And then maybe, you know, this is a lot to try to get in there, and it's a big rearranging. But then it is this idea of like, none of us can see each other in this story. Like, you don't see how clearly dangerous this dude is. Right. You know, clearly in quotes, because you've gone through this experience a million times and it hasn't been dangerous. But you can't see, he knows he's dangerous, but you can't see the real him. He clearly can't see the real anything, right? He's, whether it's race related or not, he is a crazy, you know, he's an agent of chaos. And these cops must see this sort of thing regularly, right? They must see random violence, but they still can't fathom it. Like, and so that's an interesting, we would, you know, without the stories and without the reflection, how do we see each other? That's just a thought. I think we've given you some things to think about, and I'm gonna do.
I have one more question though.
Oh yeah.
Did you change your behavior because of this guy? Do you stop talking to strangers?
Yeah, I've learned how to be a little more abrupt, or I feel the potential danger of situations more than I did before. So I know when to kind of cut things off. And but that's all, you know, I'm the type of person who kind of overanalyzes things and thinks about alternate universes and how different would things have been had I been more direct to him, you know, or had I assume at some point maybe I just should have run away from him, as opposed to, because I crossed the street, he crossed it with me, you know. So
right, that's a scary move.
Yeah.
Right. That's good. That's a good detail. And like, let it linger for us in the next telling.
Yep.
Cool. That's a great question. Thank you, Susan. Yeah. And, you know, you had a great line early on that sort of comes home to roost, is that, like, you know, you navigate, I forget exactly how you said it, but about navigating coming off as benign to whiteness that you have to interact with, because they can be violent and scary. And that's a crazy thing. And that's things, you know, a lot of people don't think about, that you sort of, TJ, when he's here, talks about it as like code switching, but it's also, you know, in that sense, it can be tamping down who you are around people. And that's a tough thing to ask of anyone or force people to do. You know, it messes with you if you don't behave in the way that you sort of intrinsically feel that you are, especially at the threat of violence. Like, that's nuts. And I think that you encapsulated that really well with the way that you put it in this story. How nuts that is. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to do a short lesson, and then we'll come back to you, and you can, you know, either run away or be around for the lesson.
Okay.
And it's going to last 10 to 15 minutes. All right. So boom, 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 boom. What do I do? Press this button. What? People keep jumping in and out of chat. One of Kay's questions was, can I put it up if I can find it here? Has anybody had any Twilight Zone encounters with strangers? And Mr. Wiley posted a good one. But if you guys have one, go ahead and throw that into chat and we will highlight it. Good to see you, TJ. I don't know if you can see it from your mod station, but there's somebody you can block out because they threw up some spam. I think they're gone now, but I know that you have extra resources, if depending on where you are, near a computer or not. So boom, I do have a lesson for today. So we are a 501c3. We promote storytelling. Just so you know, after this, we're going to hear Tim do a second telling of his story. And then we are going to have another person tell a story, and we'll do some feedback, and we'll end the show on someone retelling probably Tim's story. Okay. So that's the flow of the show. Right now, you're going to get a quick lesson. Not for a moment. We promote storytelling. Okay, so I am cleanup. I've been working on doing a lesson that's based off of a Pixar TED Talk speech, and I think it's going to take me 2 weeks to really get it so I can like run it and have it be slick, because I need to post it. I need to cut it up so you can see the sections and I can talk over them so we don't get sort of content flagged for playing other people's stuff. So I'm working on that. Next week, I am going to be talking about the lectures David Mamet gave. And this week, I'm going back to the Neil Gaiman stuff. So one of my favorite writers on writing is a guy named Doug Lippman, and he teaches storytelling, and he's got 2 really good books on how to coach storytelling and how advanced storytelling techniques that I just devoured. And so I'm in a class with him, and it's about sort of getting to the unconscious. And it's something that gets brought up in in the Mamet lectures that we're going to talk about next week. In what David Mamet says is sort of, if you do assembly line style storytelling, you're never surprised. And so you've got to find ways that when you're writing, your characters and the situations you come up with surprise you. Because if you can't surprise yourself, you're never going to surprise the audience. And as much as people like their expectations set, they want a little bit of surprise. They don't want it to be exactly the same every time. And so Doug has a specific way that he goes about sort of bolstering the unconscious and using it in an efficient way. But we're going to try something amongst ourselves really quick right here that Neil Gaiman said and had as an exercise. And it's something that I've never tried before. And so it's going to be a little bit of a discussion lesson for today. And we're going to try it out. So I'm going to bring everybody back and we're going to, if I pop that out. Okay. And I'll bring him back when he's around. And then I do this. Ah, I like this setup. Okay. So I need everybody to unmute themselves unless it's loud in your background. And what we're going to talk about is cliches. And we're just going to brainstorm and remember what are some cliched stories and plots that you think of. If you think, oh, that story is so cliched, what is stuff that you come to? And I'll start you off with some examples, and you can just cut me off when you've got one for yourself to share. He threw out in his lecture Doctor Nurse Romance, Knight Fighting a Dragon, Gunslingers, Mexican Standoff, or High Noon Standoff.
I like the enemies to lovers trope. Like, they're fighting just so they can get together in the end.
Okay. Do you think of this as like romance novel style?
Sure. Like Taming of the Shrew, 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah.
Classic.
That's great.
What about the hero that's like destined, the chosen one, that kind of story?
Yeah. Chosen one. All we need is a ring. All we need is a sword. All we need is the special shield, and all our problems will be saved is another one.
It's finding a Yoda, the wise person that's going to take you through. Or your big adversary turns out to be your dad.
Sure. Story of our lives. Find a Yoda. Yeah. Okay.
The screw up who finally gets the girl.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
The nerd who finally gets the girl. All the cool guys, the jocks, are like, they lose out.
Yeah. I love a nerdy girl who the only thing that's nerdy about her is that she's wearing glasses. Right. Wearing gorgeous supermodel with glasses on, and then it's like, oh, we didn't know. Sort of Clark Kent Superman style.
I love the manic pixie girl too. It's usually like some sort of like summer winter romance thing. It's like this really young girl, and she's kind of weird and she's all over the place emotionally, but she brings so much energy to your life at a time when you were just slowing down.
Right. And she's interested in the most boring person, because that's how those people are, right? They're just like, I'm so crazy, I need boring. Not my experience. Yeah. Oh, he's on Susan. Yeah, he's on a cell phone. TJ's working late a lot. His schedule changed, and so he jumps on late via cell phone for everybody who is wondering why we were speaking about him rather than having him here with us right now. And when his schedule dies down, he'll be back. Yeah, okay. So which of these, if any, draws most to anyone that we want to play with? And just shout it out. Some of them play on each other.
So are we going to build our own story using this trope?
That is what's going to happen. That's going to be the exercise.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I like the magical sword one in that case. We need that magical sword. All our troubles will be solved.
Has everybody in chat aware of those? Can we think of some that are like major of that? Like obviously Lord of the Rings.
King Arthur.
King Arthur.
Or pulling the sword from the stone.
Camelot.
Right. There's Sword of Shannara.
Highlander. Does that count?
Yeah, kind of. I guess that Highlander is sort of the chosen one himself.
But there was a sword.
There is a sword, but it's a slightly different. People are saying May December romance in chat is what they want us to do.
I finally thought of one. Like when the dogs meet, or you pick up the same apple at the grocery store. Those.
The meet cute.
Meet cute. Yeah.
Love
okay.
It.
So yeah, I feel like Noah, why can't we think of more items that we just need? I feel like there's a million of these. What am I missing?
What do you mean, for this particular trope or for a different trope?
For this particular trope.
Oh, you've got to have a wizard or somebody to help you. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to have all these experiences that sort of bring you to the point where you are the elected one. You've got to have somebody who really is better than you, that's like the knight, and that he tries and he can't get it out even though he has everything he needs and you're just a nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we're going to go with Lord of the Rings, can we think of more? Does anybody else have some? There's a Netflix that I just watched that was called Sweepers. And there was a little girl who was the object that they had to find. She was a robot. What are other ones where there's an item that saves everything?
Or that could destroy everything.
I just can't believe that I don't have 100 rolling off my tongue right now. What does Bond search for a specific item?
How about E.T.? Is there some way he has to get home and there's some special item that gets him there? Building a transmitter? I can't even remember. It's so long ago.
Yeah, I think one of the Thors they're trying to get to a spaceship. Oh yeah, the MCU has their version of the Horcrux. I forget what it's called, but they're always searching for that box or the Infinity Glove. Dragon Balls for Dragon Ball Z.
Mr. Wiley mentioned Indiana Jones, so there's all the Holy Grail type stuff.
Yeah, searching for the Holy Grail.
The Answer to Life Universe and Everything in the Hitchhiker's Guide. Nice. We're all kind of looking for that all the time anyway.
Okay.
And the Fifth Element.
Yeah. Oh yeah, was she the robot that they were all searching for in that one, or were they searching?
She was sort of the key. Yeah, there were multiple keys, but she was like the key or something.
Yeah, Infinity Stones. Yeah. Okay. So so now the technique for this, now that we've named some and we've got some ideas of what the tropes are in all these that like make them searching for an item. How would we go ahead and turn that to 11 if we were trying to? Like, what are 3 or 4 major things about this genre that's important? You need to have it an item.
I feel like at this point, it actually being the item would almost count. Oh, you didn't need the item at all. It was always you.
It was always you. Yeah, yeah. I think that is a part of this, right?
A MacGuffin.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I like the antisocial, like the anti-hero idea. Like this person needs to be sort of like the last person you think is going to be called, sort of thing, or doesn't want to go, or.
Oh yeah, I think that they're either an anti-hero or they're like super dorky. They're not, they're the everyman. They're the Bilbo Baggins. They're the random street scum in Fifth Element, kind of, Oh, he's just a taxi cab driver. Then all of a sudden he's like this badass. An item, ordinary person has the task. Item isn't the real key, right? The adventurer is the real person. Yeah, what can we think of? 1 or 2 more? What sort of obstacles get in the way? Does everybody get the item and then lose it at some point?
Oh yeah, usually the bad guy gets a hold of it too.
Right. So it's like somewhere. That's that page 75 plot twist where we really reach the nadir, and the ordinary person has to accept that he's a hero, and he does this by saying, "Okay, I'm gonna go on, even though it's the worst point." There's no possible way I could win. All odds are against me.
That like revenge element, when somebody messes with the hero's like sidekick, now they have the determination to fix the problem.
Right. Loses the item.
And lost the whole team is lost or gone, and that I'm alone having to do this by myself. But then somebody appears, somebody like made it. They actually got, some team members there, and
friendship wins out in the end. Okay. So, all right. I think this gives us a lot to work with. And how could we, if we were to write the most cliche of cliches, what would the item be?
Some magic jewel, right?
Right. I think
the diamond of fate that holds the whole world together.
A lamp that grants wishes.
Right. Should we combine them? Okay. It's a sword with a special stone inside of it.
And it has to have like a good origin story too.
And the hilt is made of a genie's lamp. Yeah, what's the origin story for the genie lamp hilted diamond encrusted sword?
Clearly the gods created it out of a meteorite. Clearly. The old gods, not the new gods, not the current gods.
Right.
Old gods.
Good. Old gods forged the blade. New gods stole it and added the soul stone. And then the devil added the genie in the lamp. Where does our protagonist come from?
Oh,
And
they're
who-
a street child.
Okay.
They are a homeless child.
Do they live in an orphanage or?
Oh no, they couldn't afford an orphanage. Are you kidding me? They should have it so good. They don't even have a job. They can't even work in a coal mine.
Did they?
I think we could take it from Tim. There's somebody who's had an innocent life and never had to encounter anything before, you know?
Right. I think we could do both of these, right? He's the most innocent street child. And that's what makes it so sad that nobody will take him.
Right.
He's sort of like he's North from that movie, In Search of Parents. Which works because that was also Frodo later on. Okay. Innocent street child. But the most horrible circumstances of street child.
Oh, maybe it's also the last person of their race as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah.
Can they have a best friend who's a hooker with a heart of gold?
Not only can they, but they must.
I love that trope.
Right. Also, you know, the trope's there because it's accurate. Okay. And so then he assembles a team, I would assume, of, you know, this is running a little long for the thing. So I think this is good, and you can see how just like playing with these allows for humor. We're laughing about it, and if you heighten it, you can play with it. You can that's a way of creating satire. And the question is, if we tried to turn it a little bit, if we took it 45 degrees, are there certain things in this that we could change? Or what would happen if we took one of these elements and what would it mean to turn it on its head? And we can just throw out ideas. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever tried this experiment. So I'm going to say, what if we just like juxtapose some of them? What if the item, instead of being made by gods, was made by some ordinary person?
Steve.
And so then
from accounting.
Gods, Steve from accounting, just accidentally forged this sword that was perfect and could end the world, and it's going to fall into the wrong hands. And then we send out a god to retrieve the sword to fix everything. In that case, then the whole story is about how we as mortals screw up the whole chase scene. And what does his nadir be? I don't know. That would take time to like think out. What are other things that we could do to flip on this? Ordinary item. There's a nadir. It's an ordinary kid who gets the task.
Tell me the word nadir.
Oh, nadir is like the bottom, where you're at your lowest point.
Got you. Thank you.
I'm still hooked on the accountant, and he's writing, and all of a sudden the pencil takes off on its own and starts giving him instructions. He puts together a team of accountants to sort of deal with whatever this awful thing that's going to happen, you know, and maybe at the end he's able to stab somebody in the ear with like this pencil, and the guy's head explodes, and all of a sudden you realize this is an amazing. You got it.
Yeah.
It's like the buttons on the fax machine that you don't know what they do. This
Right.
Now
they
you know.
make a sword jewel.
Right.
The genie in the Latin.
Yeah, he comes up with the answers for, and he's got to lug the fax machine. The fax machine is the thing, and he's got to lug it around, get it to Mordor, to throw it into the thing of evil. Yeah. There's yeah, people are laughing. There's a cliche of the montage of the main character training to become stronger. I think that is definitely true, especially of this version of things, right? There's always a scene where ordinary guy gets his lightsaber, but he has to go through the Dagobah training routine first. Yeah, what are other, if we flip the item to a pencil, is there a way to do it so that it is the guy isn't an ordinary person? I suppose that's already a genre, right?
Yeah.
If the guy's not an ordinary person, but you're still looking for the one item, then that's the Bourne Identity. Then that's a superhero movie. And yeah, and then it becomes a power fantasy rather than I could become this.
Maybe our opponent is very inept. Our evil opponent is very inept, and our hero doesn't become a hero. He's just slightly less inept.
He's just
a comedy of errors now.
Yeah. So that is, we're gonna move on, get back to Tim, who hopefully can hear us, and if not, well, there he is. Boom. So that is just one way to sit around and brainstorm and play with things. You can find humor and satire by just ratcheting it up, but you think about what the various cliches are, and especially of genres that you like, and you read stuff and you think, oh, that sucks. Take a couple of, the suggestion that Neil had was take some time to just write the schlockiest, most over-the-top short story set with that genre as possible. And so you get that feeling for, oh, this is the part that sucks about it. And then once you analyze that, you can come back to it and say, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was because it makes it funny, or now you see the heart in it after you've done the process of putting it on there. But also you can say, well, now that I see how it gets made the wrong way, it allows me to have this vision for, oh, I can fix it this way. And just have some fun with sort of tilting. What if you just change one or two things and keep the rest of the tropes? That way people understand that you're still in this genre. And that's the lesson for today. And hopefully you have some time with that. If you end up writing a really schlocky short story in the next week or two, send it to me. I'd love to read it. Okay, Tim, are you up for telling a second version of your story?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know how solid this is given the limited time, but I will make an attempt.
Yeah.
All right. So I just start, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. All right. How to sound authentic. I've always considered myself to be a narrator of my own life as opposed to actually experiencing it. And by my second year of college, that feeling only escalated. I was living in Santa Barbara, and none of the experiences there seemed to match up with what fate had written in stone for me as a kid who grew up in South Central LA. And that was psychologically jarring. I was making friends who lived in mansions, or at least really, really, really nice houses that I misconstrued as mansions at the time. And I was constantly navigating how to make the right social cues, how to not seem threateningly black, and to blend into every situation. a blessing and a curse, seeming pleasant at all times, even when you're displeased. I was walking home from my movie theater job, fully decked out in my uniform, which basically made me look like a tap dancer from a black and white movie. Black shoes, black slacks, a white dress shirt, a black vest, and a black bow tie. And I must have been listening to a podcast when a stranger tapped me on the shoulder. He was a scruffy white guy in a brown hoodie, nothing too out of the ordinary in Santa Barbara, with it having plenty of surfing stoner burnouts. And he asked if I had a light for a cigarette. I didn't smoke, and I didn't, so I said, no, sorry, I don't have one. And then he lifted...
I'm going to give you some direction real quick. All right, give us that dialogue, because we want to hear his voice.
Okay.
So be in that moment and present tense. So I'm walking down the street and I see this dude in a brown hoodie. You know, just say it in the present tense, and he says to me, and then do his voice.
Okay. If I could remember, I'm horrible with voices.
Yeah, that's fine. Do it bad. You gotta do bad before you're good.
You got this.
Okay. I must have been listening to a podcast when a stranger tapped me on the shoulder. He was a scruffy white guy in a brown hoodie.
He is a scruffy white guy.
He is. He is a scruffy white guy in a brown hoodie, nothing too out of the ordinary, with Santa Barbara having plenty of surfing stoner burnouts. You have a light for my...
Yeah, this is great.
All right. You have a light for my cigarette? He asked. I didn't smoke and didn't, so I said, no, sorry, don't have one. He then lifted a lighter from his pocket and looked me directly in the eye as he lit his cigarette. That definitely felt weird in the moment, but I was used to weird. As someone who hoped
I know that this is tough, but because I realized that you've got it written. And it's awesome how much you've written it, but as best as possible, it's so much more immediate for us if you're in present tense.
Okay, that definitely
that's a piece of the puzzle that's like heightening it.
Yeah.
Then we're there with you rather than watching it.
Okay. That was definitely weird, but I'm used to weird. As someone who hopes to make movies someday, or maybe even become a comedian, I love talking to strangers as both an act of kindness to the universe and as material for something I haven't written yet. Looking at that moment now, him asking if he has a cigarette and then lighting his own cigarette was him signaling that he was a chaos agent meant to pluck me out of the strange plastic reality I found myself living in. We're walking and we're talking, and with every sentence, his eyes seemed to be building up to something strange. So I crossed the street to get to my place, not at an intersection, but in the middle of the sidewalk, a clear signal that we're parting ways. But for some reason, he follows me. He's following me. And I get to the corner, and he taps me on the shoulder.
All right, I'm going to just do this to you.
Yeah.
Give us that moment where he follows you. What is the sensory situation going on there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that sort of tingles, because I've had dudes do that to me.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's a spidey sense moment.
Yeah.
Can you describe that?
It feels like a moment that the first sign in a nightmare that you realize you're in one. If that makes any sense. So
yeah. That's great.
And so when I got to the corner of the place I'm staying in, he taps me on my shoulder. Do you have change for me to catch the bus? He asks me, and I didn't have any, so I tell him I don't have any. And in response to that, he punches me in the jaw, right in the center of my bottom two teeth. And that's when adrenaline starts rushing in. Perhaps the most adrenaline I've ever felt. what in the world is going on? I'm so shocked that instead of running or immediately punching him back, I simply try to push him away as he continues to swing and shout over and over again, "I'm going to stab you. I'm going to stab you." My response is a constant, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" Which in hindsight is really me asking, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? He stops at some point, maybe because I punched him a few times in the head, or maybe just because he knew he had done just the right amount of damage, and it was time for him to scurry back into the abyss from which he came. "Run," he told me. And I did. Just as I did, he fled. He runs off. This is around the holidays, so my roommate is already out of town with his family, and I walk into my apartment, just me, look in the mirror, and I see blood trickling from my mouth. A shocking sight, but somehow I'm looking at it in the third person. So I figure I should knock on my neighbor's apartment door, and I don't think I was really shocked until I saw their shock. And they said we should go out to see what direction he went. And so we go walk out there. We don't see him anywhere, but someone notices I'm bleeding on the back of my left shoulder, which means he kept his promise and he was going to stab me. One of my neighbors described it as stabbing a puppy. The ambulance came, and so did a few officers who asked me some standard questions, which I suppose always include, do you have any gang affiliation? What a thing. I thought to be from South Central, sheltered from gangs, only to end up in Santa Barbara wearing a bow tie, bleeding from a white stranger, then being asked if you have gang affiliations. But somehow I maintained a jovial nature around the entire situation. That's part of that blessing and a curse I mentioned earlier. Maybe it's a defense mechanism, maybe it's a coping mechanism. And I think for a lot of people in my family, that kind of thing is just a way to get by. Definitely the funniest I've ever been in my life was probably in that ambulance that night. "Who stabbed someone before 7 p.m.? I exclaimed to the laughing paramedics. And now when I think about this moment, this was the first time that I realized that I was actually beginning to become my own main character. And that's the not too fleshed out ending there. But yeah.
No, that's great. That was awesome. Yeah, very awesome. And way to roll with the punches of us like interrupting and being like sort of directorial. I mean, that is part of like this process, is to like make it feel like give some people some access to like what it's like to work with a director. Yeah, that was awesome. Can you see, and this is sort of a loaded question for you, but can you see the difference when you're telling it in first person versus or not in first person, but in present tense?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, like it feels even more immediate to you.
Yeah. That's I do think that's good, because like I said, I'm very bad at telling stories, because I feel like it perhaps bored by the I don't know, by the details. Like I don't, I have to be told that the details are interesting often. So
right. Yeah, that stepping off that curb and talking about giving us that little snippet, and that you could come up with it so quick, where you're like, it's that moment where you realize you're in a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
It's not a dream, you know, at the lighter, you weren't sure.
Yeah.
But there, and the trick is, in this version of the story, is you want us to know at the lighter point. And that's why getting his voice and the dialogue into it, that's what's going to let us know and make this story pop, where we get nervous for you because you don't know. So that's this version. And like we talked about, there's ton of versions of this that you can do. There's a therapy version. There's a, just staying in this, and it's all just about choices and what you decide you want to take it with to maximize. Who is today's teller? It's because we're switching over. All right. Are you ready, Steady?
I'm ready.
Cool.
So my Uncle Ed used to call me Little Sprout, presumably because each time he saw me, I had sprouted up a few more inches. Or maybe it was actually because my mom fixed vegetarian meals and he called her Beans Baxter, and therefore I was like her little sprout. I'm not sure about that now. I could ask him, but I probably won't. The year now is 1992. I am 8 years old. And despite my being raised eating mostly vegetables, seafood, meat alternatives, and despite my vegetal moniker, I was fighting a war with one vegetable in particular who at this very moment was staring up at me from its vast territory on a large white Corningware plate. Its name was bare naked ass Brussels sprouts, y'all. And I wondered how a loving God could be so cruel as to leave me to perish in this way, but stuck to a wooden shaker chair at my granny's kitchen table. My feet are perched with weary resolve on the crossbar because my legs aren't long enough to reach the floor. And the yellow walls of her narrow galley kitchen are pretty much invisible to me at this point because right now it's just me and this emissary of Satan, honestly. So, okay. My Aunt Raina had resigned me to this grisly fate. But even as a 8-year-old, I knew that I couldn't be mad at her for this. I knew by intuition or deduction that she didn't realize what she was doing, insisting that I had to finish my vegetables before I could get up from the table. She's actually like a kind, thoughtful, spirited woman. She's got this dark curly hair. She's thick. Her frame is strong. She has this wide smile. She's always telling me pretty much anything that my parents won't tell me is what she'll tell me. In fact, one time she drove us far out to the middle of nowhere, essentially, which was actually a state park. And the trees are big and they're beautiful. But she told me we were actually there to practice screaming so that if I ever needed the courage to, I would know that I could because I had done it before. And that's unconventional. But in this highly mixed up world where people stab people before 7 p.m., you never know what you might need to do. So no, Aunt Raina was not my enemy. It was definitely the sprouts. And you need to understand, I'm not talking about Brussels sprouts that I got from like the kindergarten lunch times, and they were covered in rich, creamy cheddar cheese sauce. I'm talking about food that tastes so bad, you can't call it food anymore. You can only like justifiably call it sustenance. I'm talking about like the bare naked ass Brussels sprouts. Like when they cook, the smell of suffering fills the air. Then they get overcooked and mushy. And you think with all that cooking that the pungent flavor would like seep out of them and leave you to grieve with this dish in peace. But you'd be wrong. It's almost like supernatural the way bare naked ass Brussels sprouts had a nasty flavor that would not die, y'all. I'm trying to tell you, it's like okay, if you chewed on the bitter white rind part of an orange or a pomegranate and then you washed it down with some lawnmower clippings and some sulfur, that would pretty much be it. So now the battle lines are drawn here for me. Aunt Raina proclaimed, I got to sit here with the enemy until one of us surrenders. So 74 and a half hours later, a victor was proclaimed. It was not 74 and a half hours later. It felt like that to me, 8 years old. It was probably realistically 30 minutes in that little shaker chair. In my summation, my Aunt Raina, who probably just wanted me to eat my veggies so I'd have like strong lungs in case I needed to scream, she probably read all this misery on my face and decided there was no need to continue like the Job of the Bible testing of my faith. And I was allowed to take a leap off of that chair. The devil was once again proven a liar. And that day's battle was won.
That's great. That is awesome. I think that am I on? No, I am not on mute. Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan.
People were throwing out what foods are their mortal enemy.
Liver.
Yeah, how did it feel telling it?
Y'all don't understand that it's still real. It's still happening to this day. Like, so what's interesting is I ran farmers markets in Chicago for a while when I lived in Chicago, and I got introduced to a vegetable called kohlrabi, which is sort of like if you think of a turnip and a Brussels sprout or something, like the very pungent flavor, and then you mellowed it out with the turnip and stuff. Kohlrabi is delicious. It's got flavor. It's got a great texture when you cook it. I was like, see, this is what Brussels sprouts were trying to be this whole time. They went left. That's okay. I figured out ways to cook it. I figured it out, but like I was resolved. I really was sitting there. Like, I feel like if I could have seen my own face when I was sitting there, I was just like, I guess I'm going to sit here until the 4th grade or whatever. Like, we're going to work it out because nobody's eating this. This is unholy.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, the descriptions are great. People threw out that the unholy smell of suffering is such a great line. Really brings us into it, and it's one of those that for me it rings so true. You're in your kid self in this story. You're very much there, and even if that's not a kid line, it fits because it makes sense that's the level of that's how kids exaggerate in their selves. I know it's still real for you, but
It's so real.
but that's why that line works. It's a good use of that. Sometimes it's the illusion that makes it right. We don't actually want dialogue that's real, because real dialogue is filled with ums and ers and pauses and people retracking and oh no, that didn't happen and things like that. But you want it to feel real, and I felt you had a lot of that where they were crafted lines in here, but they felt so real because you had taken the time on them and you'd found the right mechanism for explaining the perfect moment. Throwing it over to Mac is still muted. We'll throw it to Mac and then we'll do Noah, and anybody can jump in.
Yeah, just Kay, I love the way you make these scenes come alive with these family members and your own little kidness. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome story. And I felt similarly about zucchini growing up, and my mom would just cook the living daylight out of it, and it was the worst thing ever. But yeah, I've come to peace with it. I like zucchini now. Yeah, it was hilarious. I was laughing the entire time. I love your descriptions and your sort of flowery language about this very visceral hatred that you had. The only thing I thought of was a little bit, there's a lot of why you hated it, but there was not so much like, was she going to make you sit there? Were you didn't want to disappoint her? Were you like, why the standoff? Because a lot of kids would just like throw a fit or run away or whatever. So that's the only thing I was like interested in knowing and hearing. And I'm sure you could have made it hilarious too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now she said, you need to, like, I had gotten to the end of this plate And she's like, hey, what's going on with these vegetables? Like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't.
Right. But what was the retribution that would happen?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Never really got punished.
So that might be like a kid thing, is like, what? You do what your parents tell you to, and you don't know how to disobey other than to not do the thing. You like, the next step for some kids would be to get up off the table and just walk away.
No, I wasn't disrespectful, but the Brussels sprouts were disrespecting me. I was like,
no, I see your, yeah. So
I'll sit here.
Yeah. So explaining that is one of the places that it could be built up, right? That it's the decision-making process that went into, well, I cannot eat it's impossible for me to eat them. I want to be as compliant as I can be. And so I will sit here until the cows come home.
My reading comprehension was through the roof. I'm like, you said need to sit here until I finish them. Since I'm not going to finish them, I'm just going to be sitting here. I don't know. Yeah.
There was definitely meals in my life where I sat for a long time. Susan, do you have thoughts on this story?
I thought this story was absolutely hilarious and totally brought me back to how many times I had to sit at that table. Luckily, I had a dog and people would leave the dining room. So until the liver episode, which I won't gross you guys out about that one. So, but I love the story. It was hilarious. I mean, you and your Brussels sprout fight was like so funny. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And you had a classic trope. You had the faithful dog that you could kind of swipe things over.
Right.
If only.
Yeah. And this goes back to what was originally in Tim's story about, like, it's hard to think that we have stories. And who would think, like, when I was a kid, I refused to eat my Brussels sprouts is like this compelling narrative. But here it is. You say it, and all of us are like, oh, that connects so much with me. It wasn't Brussels sprouts for me. It was this horrible soup that I had thrown up in. And then my mom was like, you were going to sit there till you eat it. I know you threw up on purpose. And so, everybody has this story, and that's why we share them. And it creates this connection, and it doesn't need to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be a snap judgment or a risk style story. Everything can be a big one.
Sounds like someone's doing the dishes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Scraping those Brussels sprouts down the tray.
Yeah, somebody's making Brussels sprouts real quick.
Yeah, I was definitely doing that thing where, right after you I feel like it happens with stand-up, like right after my set, it's hard to pay attention to the next thing because I'm still processing the fact that I just, said a bunch of stuff. But I was definitely in awe of your natural storytelling. It felt very conversational. It was sort of the opposite of me, the opposite of the public radio kind of voice. And I just loved all of the details and just, your ability to add energy to all the right moments. And the part that really stood out to me was the part about driving into the middle of nowhere to scream. I thought that was really interesting. And I don't know if I missed it, but I would love to know more about the sensations of that and kind of what that moment really means to you.
I only realized what it was as an adult. As a kid, I was like, all right, I guess you're supposed to practice screaming just in case somebody's stranger danger. I don't know. As an adult, I actually had to use what she taught me. And I thought about it like almost in the moment that it happened. I was like, I got a voice bigger than any voice my mom's ever heard me have. It's like, Raina, very prescient of you. And it worked out. It scared away the weirdos.
It's so hard for me to scream. Like, it's like even at a concert when people tell you to scream, I'm like, I don't like.
Yeah, good skill. Yeah, we're running long, which is, I apologize. It is my fault. What do you think about doing a real quick version of just going into that moment and talking about it a little more, and going into the thought process of waiting a little bit more and just doing vignettes?
I would like to counter your offer with seeing if anybody wants to pick one of the two tales of the evening to retell yet.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get to the end. Mac, are you ready with your version?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So Tim, I'm going to do yours. Sorry if it's a butcher job.
Oh, I can't wait.
So I mean, I'm hanging out outside that really posh movie theater, man. I haven't scored anything in a long time, and I'm kind of pissed off. You know, these people that come out, they're like, you know, who the hell do they think they are? You know, I mean, they're all dressed. And then this guy, he's a black guy, young guy. He comes out, and man, he is like dressed to the nines. I mean, you'd think he was going to a wedding or something. And his shoes are like shiny and black pants. He's got this white shirt on. He's got this, you know, this bow tie on. And he acts like his shit doesn't stink, you know? And I think, yeah, man, you know. So I say, hey, you got a light, you know? And he stops. I mean, he doesn't just, he stops. He's like playing the nice guy with me, right? I know he thinks I'm trash, man. And he says, no, I don't smoke. And I say, and I pull out my lighter. I light my own cigarette. I mean, it's a message to him, you know? But he keeps talking to me. I can't believe this guy. So we walk down the street. He's talking to me. I'm thinking, maybe I can get something off this guy. I mean, like, he's like a babe in the wilderness here, you know? He'd come out of that movie theater. He's probably feel safe in there, but not out here. This is my territory, you know? But he tries to dump me. He heads across the street. I head across the street. What the hell, you know? And I say, you know, hey, you got some change for me for the bus. I figured that would do it. He'd give me some change. You know, how could a guy like that not have some change, or at least a bill or two? He says, no, I don't have any change. I think, you know, what are you playing me for, a sucker or something like that, you know? So I take him, I smack him right in his bottom teeth, like bang. And he just looks at me like, what are you doing? Where's this kid been living, man? You know? I mean, so I start hitting him. And then I tell him, I'm gonna stab you. But he didn't run away. He starts hitting me back. And I got a knife. I don't think he's got anything in his pocket. Oh man, this guy, holy crap. So, you know, I mean, it's so shit. I take the knife and I just stab him really quick. And he just keeps coming. I said, you better run away. I mean, I got to tell this guy to run away, right? Oh man. And so he goes, yeah, and he runs away and I run away. Well, I got to tell you guys, I'm just trying to understand who this really nasty chaos agent was. Because me, as this young black man, I mean, I knew they were out there, but I'd never encountered anybody like this. And I know he was bad news, but I sort of felt if I could just be nice to everybody, stay out of the fray, be nice to everybody, I could get out of anything, you know? And that even worked for me. I mean, I was working at this really fancy theater and I made a lot of friends and some of them had some real money. And when I'd go, you know, to their mansions on the hill and stuff, you know, I was like, I didn't want to be the threatening black kid, you know? I wanted to I just want to get along with everybody, you know? And it's always worked for me. I've always been able to stay. And then I meet this guy and I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? I mean, I punched him back, but I got to tell you, my heart really wasn't in it. And because I never encountered anything like this, I lived a sheltered life. My parents really sheltered me. I liked movies. I liked books. I had no need for sports. I loved just being in this movie theater. That was my element. Here's where my friends were. Everybody was really cool. So I go up to the apartment. I look in the mirror. Blood coming out of my mouth all over my white shirt. I think, gee, this is like nuts. So I go knock on my neighbor's door, and he's like, whoa, what happened to you? And I think, oh, wow, this is maybe serious. He says, let's go down. We run downstairs. We look up the street. Don't see the guy. And then one of his friends noticed I'm bleeding from my shoulder, my back. That little bastard, he stabbed me. He actually stabbed me. I mean, and I didn't even know it happened. So they call the cops, they call the ambulance, you know, and I'm still thinking, this doesn't happen to somebody like me. I've practiced my whole life just to avoid these kind of people and this kind of thing. I don't get it. And I get in the ambulance and the cop is talking to me as I'm climbing in. He says, well, you got any gang affiliations? And I thought, oh man, you know, it's the first thing he's going to think, you know, and even in the ambulance, I got to make it like not real. I say, who gets stabbed before 7 p.m. on a Saturday night, man? And I get the ambulance attendants laughing. But you know, I really had to think about this stuff now. Like I've seen what really can happen. And I can see that, you know, my modus operandi, if you're nice, nothing bad will ever happen, just might not be true. Thank you.
Wow. That was a surreal experience.
Wow. That was trippy,
I
Mac.
love that.
I know. You thought I was just going to go with the white guy, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh my God.
I didn't know how to do that transition, but I should have said, but I was talking to my therapist about this other day. I use a therapist like that. That's a really great story.
That was great. I mean, you did it better than me.
Well, I could. I was just playing with it. Yeah.
But a lot of the things, it was weird because I'm watching the moments in my head as you're saying it, which I don't think I really do even as I think of the story on my own. So that was crazy. And even thinking of the other guy's perspective, I feel like that was probably very accurate. Like I do wonder what he thought seeing me, like what inspired him to mess with me. So yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, that is why we do this, is to create that trippy experience and like blow some sockets in the mind to get you to that unconscious place to think like, oh, there's some twists to this story that I couldn't see if I hadn't seen it from this crazy mirror that we put up. So I am glad that it worked. Everybody is welcome to come join us in the Discord. I'm going to copy and paste it into the, whatchamacallit, everybody's chat. So wherever you're watching us, come see us. That's our show. We are 5 minutes late, which isn't that bad. Really. See you. So sorry, Kay, that you didn't get a second telling of yours. But all in all, a very good show, and thank you, everybody. And my lesson will be shorter next week. Bye.